In Ecuador, the death toll after the 6.5 earthquake in Guayas rose to 15. President Guillermo Lasso visited the most affected areas. In France, demonstrators take to the streets to protest against President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform. And in Israel, security forces repress protests against the judicial overhaul proposed by Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right government. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Ecuador, 15 people have been reported dead after a 6.5 magnitude earthquake that hit the province of Guayas on Saturday. According to the Secretariat of Risk Management, all ministries are active and with economic resources to urgently attend to this emergency. The government entity also said that a team of specialists has been deployed to Isla Puna, near the epicenter of the earthquake, to evaluate the needs and deliver humanitarian aid to the people affected. At the moment, more than 440 people are reported injured. At least 180 houses have been damaged and 84 totally destroyed, while 50 schools and 31 health centers have been affected. Authorities warn that these figures, both in terms of death and injuries, as well as the damage to infrastructure, could increase as assessments in the affected areas continue. In Peru, the municipality of Punta Hermosa has issued a statement ordering the emergency evacuation of the inhabitants of the district due to a landslide warning in the area. Authorities have issued evacuation orders for parts in Punta Hermosa, Lima province, due to the threat of landslides. Reports indicate that a rupture of a reservoir in Santo Domingo de los Olleros may cause large landslides in the municipality, particularly in North Beach and Central Beach. Officials are recommending residents to stay alert and move to higher areas. Authorities could expand evacuation orders in the coming hours. Disruptions in electricity and telecommunication services are possible where significant flooding or landslides impact utility networks. Floodwaters and debris flows could render some bridges, road networks, or railways impassable, impacting overland travel around affected areas. The president of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, Brahim Ghali, arrived in Venezuela on Sunday for a two-day official visit. The Arab dignitary was received this morning at Simón Bolívar International Airport in Maiquetía, in the state of La Guaira, by the People's Power Minister for Foreign Affairs, Ivan Hill, accompanied by the Deputy Minister for Africa in the Foreign Ministry, Yuri Pimentel. This is the first time the Secretary General of the Polisario Front has arrived in the South American country, with which he has fraternal ties of friendship. Last Thursday, Ghali received the credentials of the new ambassador of the Bolivarian Republic accredited to the San Juan Bautista areas. The diplomat conveyed to the president the greetings of the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and reaffirmed Venezuela's firm decision to continue supporting the cause of the Sahrawi people and their right to self-determination. This Sunday, the National Electoral Council of Cuba is carrying out a dynamic test in view of next March 26 national elections, where citizens will have to elect 470 deputies to the People's Power National Assembly. According to the Vice President of the electoral body, Thomas Amaran, the exercise will first consist of a practical test in the polling centers and in each of the structures where conditions have been created to conduct the voting. Amaran indicated that a practical exercise will be carried out with ballots that will not bear the names of the candidates, which will include a scrutiny and transmission of the votes. According to Marina Carbo, member of the National Electoral Council, all these actions are aimed at ensuring that these elections are organized and transparent as established by electoral law in the country. During an interview with the Lebanese media outlet Al Mayadeen, the Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel talked about the history of the Cuban Revolution and its current challenges in a world still suffering from structural inequality, which has been heightened after the pandemic.
The revolution has constantly been revolutionizing itself. The revolution has constantly been in transformation, in changes, adapting itself to each one of the complex historical moments that it has had to live through, and this has been done at the present time. Therefore, the revolution has not stopped being a revolution of changes, a revolution of transformations, and for this reason it has the majority support of the Cuban people. We should ask ourselves how the revolution, which since it was born besieged, attacked, blockaded by the main imperialist power, by the most powerful power in the world, only 90 miles away from that power, how it has been able to resist all that onslaught of blockade, sanctions, and aggressions. And at the present time of tightened blockade and a broad media campaign that seeks to discredit and undermine the authority and the example of the revolution. When one thinks about these things and the way and the attitude in which the empire has acted against that revolution, which has only wanted the well-being of the Cuban people, there is only one answer. It has done it out of hatred. And it has done it because it is worried by the example of that revolution.
The Cuban president also mentioned how neoliberalism failed in the face of the pandemic and how it cannot solve the world's issues in favor of the majority.
I believe that the world is experiencing a very difficult situation. There's a lot of hopelessness in the world. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world. We have just gone through a pandemic that upset all the paradigms of neoliberalism. So many years of neoliberalism, so much propaganda supporting neoliberalism. And when a complex moment arrives, the world sees that neoliberalism is not able to solve with equity and inclusion for all the issue of the pandemic. The health systems of the most developed capitalist countries collapsed. These health systems were overwhelmed. How can we explain that the neoliberal world does not provide alternatives for the majority?
The Cuban president also stated that revolution will always be the inspiration for young people and that revolution should be seen with all its contradictions.
In the middle of the pandemic, the rich have become richer and the poor have become poorer. Therefore, this inequality that has been formed, that is formed within the capitalist society itself, where the 1% takes advantage and takes 90% of all the wealth that is being created, this inequality is leading to rebellion, and it's leading to the rebellion of the youngest people of the new generation. That is why I'm of the opinion that revolution is an alternative regardless of the way the revolution is carried out. The revolution will always be the aspiration for young people. However, it is always necessary to take into account the historical references and to critically analyze what has happened in the revolutionary processes. We will not only see the revolution from an idealistic position, but we must see them with all their contradictions, with the moments they have lived through, with the moments they had to be overcome, and even to see those revolutions that could not last and could not succeed because of the mistakes that were made.
The government of Bolivia is working to control a dengue fever outbreak in several departments. Health systems have detected over 15,000 positive cases. Freddy Armijo, head of epidemiology at the Ministry of Health and Sports, informed the press that so far in 2023, a total of 47 people have died of dengue fever, while the number of active cases is 15,477, with the department of Santa Cruz being the most affected with 11,077 cases, representing the highest number so far. However, Armijo pointed out that the number of infections is decreasing thanks to government actions. The official remarked that work continues with concrete actions for the prevention and diagnosis of suspected patients. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In France, protests continue against Emmanuel Macron's pension reform. This Sunday, citizens came out to the streets to reaffirm their rejection of government's plans to change the retirement age from 62 to 64 years old, approved this Thursday without a vote of Parliament, under the legal protection of a constitutional power, which makes it possible to avoid the legislature. Sunday's demonstrations took place one day before the vote in Parliament on motions of disapproval presented by opposition deputies against the government, which, if approved, would invalidate the presidential decree. Demonstrators described the reform as unfair and its approval as an arbitrary measure on behalf of the government. Therefore, they claim that blockade actions will be maintained and will gradually increase. More than 1,200 polling stations in Montenegro opened their doors at 7 a.m. local time on Sunday to hold presidential elections. Some 540,000 voters will be able to elect a new president from among 7 candidates, only one woman among them, for a 5-year term. The elections are held a few days after the country's president, Milo Djukanovic, dissolved parliament due to the lack of consensus to form a government. Djukanovic seeks to be re-elected for a 3rd term in these elections, which will pit again the European bloc represented by the president against some candidates closer to Moscow. Djukanovic has ruled Montenegro almost continuously for nearly 3 decades since he broke with Serbia and helped to oversee independence in 2006. Montenegro is a NATO member and candidate for European Union membership. Serbia and its breakaway province Kosovo are on their way to normalize relations after tensions between both rose in November 2022. Serbian and Kosovar authorities met in the city of Ohrid in northern Macedonia with the mediation of the European Union. Serbia's president, Aleksandar Vučić, said his government and Kosovo agreed on several crucial points in what he considered as progress in a constructive process for the normalization of ties. The Serbian leader, however, pointed out that while his country is ready to work on the implementation of many points of the plan endorsed by the European bloc, formal recognition and membership of Kosovo in the United Nations is out of the question. Kosovo unilaterally declared its independence in 2008 with the support of the United States and many of its allies. The breakaway region is now recognized by several countries, including Russia, China, and Serbia itself. Kazakhstan held early elections on Sunday, allowing independent candidates to be elected to parliament in a sign of democratic openness. Kazakhs went to the polls on Sunday to elect the lower house of parliament, also known as Majlis, in a snap election as part of the institutional overhaul promoted by the country's president, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. Polling stations for Kazakhstan's parliamentary elections closed at 8 p.m. local time after a calm voting day, the country's Central Election Commission reported. 2 hours after the polls closed, 6.4 million citizens, or 53.11% of the 12.3 million eligible voters, had cast their ballots. The turnout was just over 5% lower than in the previous parliamentary elections in January 2021, when it was 58.2%. In addition to the Majlis elections, which are valid regardless of voter turnout, special local elections were also held. Russian President Vladimir Putin paid a visit to Mariupol, inspecting the city infrastructure and talking to local residents. They discussed the construction of new residential micro-districts and social and educational facilities, housing and communal services infrastructure, and medical institutions. Deputy Prime Minister Kushnulin told Putin that Mariupol residents were actively returning to the city following restoration works, adding that public transport is up and running in Mariupol. Kushnulin showed Putin the building of the city Philharmonic Hall. The Deputy Prime Minister also said reconstruction of the city center, where many historical buildings are located, is planned to be completed by the end of 2023. Russian President Vladimir Putin has met with senior military commanders at a command center in the city of Rostov-on-Don. According to the Kremlin press service, the meeting took place as part of an unannounced visit by the Russian president to the command and control center in southern Russia, responsible for military operations in Ukraine. During his visit, Putin received an assessment of military reports from the troops stationed at the control center. The high-level meeting follows Putin's surprise visits to Crimea and the city of Mariupol in the Donetsk region. teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, Dial 461, and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the South. Protests continue in Israel against the judicial reform. Demonstrations were repressed by security forces. The protest leaders denounced in a statement the increase of violence against the rallies, which they consider is due to direct incitements by Yair Netanyahu, son of the Prime Minister. Jair Netanyahu described the demonstrators as Nazis, comparing them on social networks with Nazi parliamentary groups. The mobilized population held the prime minister responsible for all these events and called on him to ask security agents to stop the violence. Former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan criticized Islamabad police on Sunday after being accused of terrorism and other offenses. 17 of his aides and scores of supporters were also charged after ousted premier's followers clashed with security forces in the capital on Saturday. The clash took place outside a court where the former prime minister was to appear in a grave case. Riot police wielded batons and fired tear gas while Khan supporters threw firebombs and hurled rocks at the officers. More than 50 officers were injured and several police cars and motorcycles were torched. Police said 59 of Khan's supporters were arrested during the violence. Khan faces charges of terrorism, obstructing police officers in carrying out their task, attacks on police, wounding officers, and threatening their lives.
They were isolating Imran Khan. Their plan was very clear: isolate him and bring him inside the judicial complex. Their plan was to murder me. I'm making that clear. And I will also make clear what happened in Islamabad. They wanted to arrest me and take me to Balochistan from there. These were the conspiracies and plans. What I saw on people's faces at that time was anger and emotions. They were not afraid of anything. Fear is over. If I hadn't gotten out of the car there quickly, I'm telling you today, we would have had a bloodshed. The police were provoking supporters and they must react. And the situation would have gotten out of everyone's hands.
Syrian President Bashar al-Assad met this Sunday with Emirati leader in Abu Dhabi. During the meeting, al-Nahyan stated that the talks explore ways to enhance cooperation for stability and progress in Syria and the region. Mohammed bin Zayed urged Arab countries to welcome Syria back and reconcile with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad after differences arising from the U.S.-imposed conflict since 2011. The United Arab Emirates was the first Gulf country to reopen its embassy in Syria at the end of 2018 and has also sent several batches of humanitarian aid to help people cope with the aftermath of February 6 earthquakes. The visit marks a continuation in the ongoing thaw of relations between Syria and other Arab countries, more than a decade after the 22-member Arab League suspended Damascus membership. The UAE's approach and efforts towards Syria are part of a deeper vision and a broader approach aimed at strengthening Arab and regional stability. On Sunday, Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani met with the head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Shamkhani, in Baghdad. A statement by al-Sudani's office said they discussed relations between the two countries, as well as security and political situation in the region. Al-Sudani and Shamkhani also discussed Iran's and Saudi Arabia's recent re-establishment of diplomatic relations. Shamkhani signed memorandum of understanding on security with Iraq's National Security Advisor, Qasem al-Arahi. It included coordination in protecting the common borders between the two countries and the consolidation of joint cooperation in several security fields, the statement said. Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian stressed that peace in the Middle East is a priority among the agreements reached for restoring relations with Saudi Arabia. During a press conference on Sunday, the diplomat affirmed that Iran and Saudi Arabia have agreed to normalize relations broken off 7 years ago. Iranian Foreign Minister added that the agreements achieved were reached in the meeting between Ali Shamkhani, Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council of Iran, and his Saudi counterpart, Musaad bin Mohammed al-Ayman, who have been meeting in Beijing since March 6th. The Iranian Foreign Minister also said that he will meet with the Saudi Foreign Minister, Prince Faisal bin Farhan, in the near future, and that he is pushing for the reopening of the embassies in both countries.
The last message exchanged between Iran and Saudi Arabia in the last 24 hours was Iran's announcement of its availability for the foreign ministers' meeting, and also the suggestion of 3 venues for the meeting. We will agree on a time and place of the meeting as soon as possible, after coordination between us.
We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.